Hello listeners, it's Byrne and Wade here. It's come to our attention that some of you have taken offence to some of the things that we've said lately, especially on social media. So we decided this week we're not going to offend anybody with our intro. Enjoy.
Wait, isn't that called white noise?
Ah, fuck.
How hard this was to research to try and get the community like I was doing work.
Sci-gasm.
Oh, Wade.
Hey man, what's going on?
Not a whole lot. Oh, my mistake. Well, seems that some people are a little bit sensitive on the internet.
Vegans.
I had no idea.
Who would have thought people wouldn't be able to take a joke on the internet and think that you're attacking them rather than laughing at and with them?
Well, can I just stress, like, if you haven't been observing what's happening online, we managed to offend vegans and insecure men on International Women's Day.
We gained a lot of followers. We gained a lot of followers.
Can I just stress, though, that was not our intention. We did not go out to offend people. We go out to make a joke, have a bit of a laugh, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We go out and we have a joke and we'll poke fun at people, we'll poke fun at ourselves, and, you know, and I was explaining this to you today. One of my big pet hates is that people come to our corner of the internet and they start screaming, this is offensive. They don't understand the context. They don't listen to the show. They haven't followed our page for very long. They don't understand that we poke fun. I poke fun at your height. You poke fun at how good looking I am. Like there's just a range. You poke fun at how creepy I am sometimes.
I poke, there's many things
my
I've tried
drinking.
to... Yeah. Plenty of things. But the point is, I'm not offended. Are you offended by poking fun at each other?
I'm not offended at all.
I'd like to apologise to anyone who felt offended. That wasn't our intention. Today we got an episode on what it means to be offended, the science of offence.
Yeah, and we just want to let our listeners know as well, we're not going to fucking change what we do. If people, like, provided it's not, you know, it's provided it's within reason. We don't go out there and say something which is obviously too far, but you can't come into an area of the internet kicking and screaming at things out of context, not knowing what we're trying to achieve at Sci-gasm and what, you know, how we approach science communication at Sci-gasm.
I was quite introspective when a few people came on and said, oh, you're bullying, you're being really mean, and I went back and looked through all the stuff I'd written, and no, we weren't. Oh my God. You were definitely being too sensitive from my opinion. So
But
look, if you're offended, fine, you can be offended. You're entitled to be offended.
That you're bullying them by approaching them like that if you keep arguing that point, if it's persistent.
Oh,
If you keep
yeah,
saying,
but
"No,
they're
you're
the
wrong."
one who brings it up, and they're in our group. They're on our site.
Yeah.
I'm not chasing them down. I'm not following them. I'm trying to give them my perspective. And we had people comment saying, you sound like the bully that's been pulled into the principal's office just saying, I was just trying to have a joke with him. And I can understand that perspective
We
too.
didn't pull their pants down and shove them in a locker.
That's right. We didn't pursue them. They came to us, pulled their own pants down and said, this is
I
offensive.
may put a hashtag vegan in there. And hashtag micropenis.
Anyway, I was That's self-deprecating.
Well, that's what we pride ourselves on.
Yeah. Look, I was dumbfounded about how offensive some of the things I said were, and I don't think they were. If you want to go and check out our Facebook page, go back to, I don't know, International Women's Day, and you can check out some of the things we said and make up your own mind.
We weren't, and just to kind of stress to our listeners, if they do follow us on social media, we haven't criticised International Women's Day. In fact, we promoted it. We found it really interesting that people were like, what about International Men's Day? It's like, well, yeah, that's on November 19th, is it?
I don't know. Yeah.
Something like that, 16th, 19th, 14th, I can't remember, but there's a day there that's International Men's Day. And then the next response was, well, I didn't know about, shows how much it's promoted. And you're like, oh, you're a fucking
Yeah, I
idiot.
can't believe people got offended at International Women's Day. I'm like, okay. And then even some of the jokes, we made fun of vegans, but, you know, hey, in this day and age, who doesn't? Like, I don't think we were saying anything that particularly offensive. If you disagree, please feel free to send us some comments.
My favourite part of that.
Again.
My favourite part of that whole thing was like, when we'll give our listeners some context, I sent out a tweet saying, congratulations on vegans on becoming the most, or being the most easily offended people on the internet. There's some stiff competition. And pretty much these vegans just bombarded that saying, you guys are bullies. And it's like, you have pretty much just proven my point.
There were vegans there as well in their defense saying,
absolutely.
I find this funny.
And it's like, good, you have broken the stereotype, you know, but all these other ones like, you can't say that there's bullying. It's like, you have just pretty much proved my point. And people who are watching, looking on like, yeah, you've just proved their point. You are literally living up to that stigma.
Yeah.
So, we poke fun at everyone, and people poke fun at us. We get hate mail all the time. We enjoy it.
Anyway, it made me start thinking about it. So what we do best, we look at some science. So I had to look into the science of offence. I had to figure out, were we being offensive? Really? So I had to figure out, what does it mean to be offensive? Okay, and there's a few psychological definitions out there, but the premise of offence really rests on some sort of like injustice. Like, so offence may be caused if someone or someones are deprived of what they are rightfully entitled to. You know, that could be respect or recognition or whatever, you know. That's where the premise of offence comes from.
So if someone was to come in and say, no, you've got blonde hair, blue eyes. Not that blonde hair, blue eyed people have really had any trouble in the past. Sorry, you're not right for this job. You could take offence to that, saying, "Oh, you wouldn't understand. You're white, or you're blonde, or you're blonde hair, blue eyes." You could take offence to, depending on the context of that,
because it would be unjust. Yeah, there would be some sort of level of offence. But if they said, having a bit of fun, blonde, you're clearly an idiot. I base this on the actions of many movie stars. Then I'd be like, okay, they're having a joke about blonde people. Not offensive. I'm a bit further removed.
What happens if they ask you if you shove rocks up your vagina like Gwyneth Paltrow?
I will tell them they're too porous.
And I lost one.
All right, so look, I started having a look around. What categorized people being offended? How do we determine, like, why are people offended,
Yeah, that's a really kind of good point. Why are some people so offended and others aren't offended about, like, I have to say, there's a spectrum there. We're pretty far on the side of it. I can't imagine that there's much out there that would be like, well, I was just offended.
Yeah. I will get to about you and my perspective on offence later. What we can find offence. Yeah. But like, where it comes from, I've read this 2011 paper from the University of British Columbia, and it suggests that our sense of being offended comes as a consequence of behavioural evolution. So what we do is we have a tendency to try and avoid illnesses and diseases and things like that. Okay, makes sense. You want to survive, you want to enjoy disease-causing bacteria, pathogens, and things like that. So this means we see specific actions or certain cues as disease-causing, pathogenic, and even like a slight association with a non-pathogenic agent can create an aversive response, i.e. we are disgusted by it. So some of the things we get offended by might be some sort of subversive cue that we associate with disease.
Really?
Yeah, it's a behavioural thing. So we associate certain characteristics with disease, and that, like, the characteristics you associate depends on your upbringing, your background, your culture, all that.
I was going to say, because that would depend on cultural and diversity.
Absolutely.
And what your family's history or what your community has been through. So, for instance, if someone makes a Jewish joke or something like that about the Holocaust, well, everyone's kind of like, oh, geez, that's a bit far for putting something out there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if you've got that, if you're at the other end of the spectrum and you've been raised saying these people are dirty, then you would be more inclined to be offended by things that they do, things that they say, because you associate that cue with them.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So offence, we think, comes from a cultural / evolutionary thing over generations.
Okay.
Now, there is some preliminary research out there suggesting that there are indeed snowflakes who walk among us too.
Snowflakes? Yeah. What's the term? All right, explain the term.
That's not
snowflake.
A technical term. I'm just talking about the technical term are highly sensitive peoples, or HSPs.
HSPs, halal snack packs.
Halal snack packs.
Yeah.
Highly sensitive people. And there is some research out there that suggests about 20% of people could be considered HSPs.
So I've eaten so many HSPs, and every time you say HSP, my mouth waters.
Thinking halal snack pack.
I'm not thinking of highly sensitive people.
I need some garlic and chili sauce on that. Yeah,
exactly.
So there was research, and this was out of UC Santa Barbara and also Stony Mouth University, and they looked at fMRI scans of brains, and they showed there was 18 couples. Sorry, 9 couples, 18 people.
Yep.
Okay, and they showed them pictures of people who were smiling and people who were sad, and they showed them pictures of both strangers and their significant other. And they noticed that...
Oh, could you imagine that? There would be no lying in that whatsoever. Like, if there was, like, someone who, like, the look of them pissed you off, you'd be like, oh, fuck.
Well, like, this results... It's confirmed that they suggested that there are a group of people that are highly sensitive, that the areas in the brain that are associated with empathy and emotion lit up more for certain groups of people. And then when they showed them people that they already knew, it lit up even more again. So they were highly sensitive to strangers and therefore even more sensitive to people they knew and their apparent emotions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it drew out more emotion in them looking at, say, an angry face. They would be, oh, like,
yeah, they would be more inclined to feel for them, you know.
Wow.
And that's about 20% of people. Most people would be like, oh yeah, some dude's angry, good for him, moving on. And then they'd see their significant other as angry or sad, and they'd be like, oh, okay, that person's sad. I'm a little less happy about that because I know them. But there are some people that are like, oh,
could you imagine in 15 years' time if it comes out as like a mental illness or something like that?
Like snowflake syndrome.
Yeah,
highly sensitive
syndrome.
persons.
Yeah.
I think we need these people. I'm glad they're around.
I think it's good because they do bring into check certain issues, and something says, hey, that's a little bit too far. But you just get the people who are just over the top.
Yeah.
Like, there's just, and like anything, there's always a spectrum.
Yeah, well, if we talk about what is offensive, clearly what is offensive changes over time, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it depends, once again, on the culture, and obviously there's cultural evolution, societal changes, and what was offensive 10, 20, 50, or 100 years ago may be not offensive now, and vice versa.
Well,
There's stuff that...
Jaywalking is a perfect example.
Yeah, jaywalking's a bit of matter of fact these days, at least here in Australia.
You're a jaywalker, whereas opposed the term jay was a negative term associated with people, wasn't it?
I assume so, I don't know.
Like that, yeah.
My cousin's name's Jay. He's a dick, though.
Is this good on him?
That's probably why they named him Jay.
I find that offensive, thank you, Byrne.
But
why
like,
don't you say he's a vagina? Huh?
I don't know. Because he's hard and soft, depending on his mood.
Okay. Doesn't take a pounding.
But like, think about some of the stuff that was offensive or wasn't offensive when we were growing up, you know, and now it's quite offensive. Think about some of the words that you can and can't use these days that you perhaps more common 100 years ago.
Oh, the social progress that's been made has been great. Like, we're grown up in a generation, we're very accepting, you know, whatever colour, whatever race, whatever religion, whatever sexuality, whatever, we don't care. Like, as long as you're a good person.
Yeah.
I think most people would agree with that.
I'd like to think so, but like, there are the inverse of that is there's stuff that we do today. So we send out a lot of emails when we're asking for guests, and we don't get replies from all of them.
That's true.
I've never been offended by many of them. Lots of them. Most of them.
All of them, we just make them up.
We just sit outside their house until they agree to be interviewed by us.
Yeah.
But I've never been offended by not receiving an email back. Apparently, when email first came out, it was incredibly offensive to not send a return email or at least an acknowledgement that you'd received it.
Oh, it's because of all the bloody things you sign up to now, the spam.
That's it, but it's
no
not
one can see
offensive
our
anymore.
emails. That's what I'm going for.
I hope you're not offended by the amount of phone calls you make to me and I just turn down.
I hope you're not offended by all the dick pics I sent you.
This is it, though. Offence changes. What is offensive has changed over years, and it will continue to change.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I can understand. There's even terminologies like... terminologies used to describe like ethnics and things like that in Australia. Like, I remember watching a show that was on Comedy Channel. It was around in I think it was the early 80s, and they used the term wog. Yeah. And I thought, like, and even like Wog Boy.
That movie that came out,
and stuff like that. Like, I don't think that would probably fly as well now as it...
I think it'd be okay. It's probably just drifted off into
but what,
no man's
even,
land.
Okay, for example, like even with... Yeah, we're going to look back. This is one of the things that I reckon. We're going to look back at the gender pay gap, like women getting paid less than men. I know that people kind of come out and they say it's misconstrued and things like that at times, but like just how women less, like there's less politicians, there's less women representing politicians. I think we'll look back at that in like 50 years' time and go, oh my God, like... Yeah.
Like we look back now and say women didn't have the vote?
Yeah, or even like...
That's outrageous.
Even as far back as like, people of, color not being able to to vote.
Yeah, you're exactly right, man. Like, obviously it's going to change over time, and that's fine. We need to change with society. There is some more research out there, and I'm glad we've talked at how unoffended we are by everything, because the research suggests that your ability to avoid being offended often comes from a place of privilege. So I think we would know about privilege being two white males.
Can I just say, the white male as a species has had, well, not a species, but like as a part of society, as a demographic, has had a really good run. Okay, like how about we just. Everyone let's just start, encouraging people to speak out against some of them.
Do you know white men are decreasing as the heads of businesses and in political positions? They're going down. I'm like, well,
when you make up 100%, if one leaves, you're not 100% anymore.
Yeah, I get that. But obviously we might be biased here. We come from a position of of privilege, where we think our authority and the position we've been in, you have no right to be offended by this. But we've come from a group that's pretty much been advantaged all the way through our life.
I absolutely wholeheartedly agree. And you can even look at just the ramifications of, say, the Indigenous population in Australia. Just how now they're like, oh, why do they get so many benefits? And that you get, obviously, people who don't understand the, societal welfare issues. But it's like, yeah, but they were literally only able to vote in the 60s.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are people they've got kids, younger than us, kids in their, who could even be, just finished high school, who have lived their whole 18 years, with parents who weren't able to vote at some stage in their life. It's incredible. And then you kind of think, well, why are they getting, why do we have to put so much money in? Well, it's like, well, that could be it, because they have come from
they've never had that opportunity. They've never had the education. They've never had that opportunity to be able to provide as much for their children. And
exactly, to live in a good area, to connect, to network in a good area, to go to a good school, things like that. There's a whole range of things, even just an education and a healthy diet.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
So look, at the end of it, we're talking about offending people, and there are obviously a number of things, and it's pretty inconclusive because it's psychology of what is actually offensive. So I tried to flip it around and go, all right, Dan, all right. I didn't intend to be offensive. Some people will see it as offensive. There's nothing you or I can do about that. That's going to happen.
No, I think with our type of humour, I think we're always going to offend people. Yeah. And if we're not offending anyone, I don't think it's going to be as successful as we've been, as we've seen. Like, I like to think that when we bag the shit out of each other, listeners enjoy it.
That we're really being successful.
We're really showing our success and white privilege.
So I started looking into then, all right, if we can't avoid the offensive thing, maybe we should work into how do we make something funny, How do we ensure...
We've been trying to figure that out for a while now,
It has been a while. And what I found in my research is that funny actually coincides really, really closely with offensive. It's scary in a way.
I have to agree with that because...
Oh, good. I'm glad, because I actually have a study here.
Oh, good. Whenever we show you, like...
I'll write to this author and tell him.
Just my mate Wade. But I think it's... I think that's true because you think about it, like just in our anecdotal evidence, whenever we show someone one of it, like, the other something, and usually the best thing that we show, we always go, or something, where we just look at each other and shake hands like, you can't post that.
Yeah,
that's too far.
I don't know. It does. The most successful post we've had, I'm quite often like, what is wrong with people? No, but anyway.
Sorry, back to the more important study.
Well, this was a study out of 2008 from the University of Colorado, and it was looking at what makes something funny, and it identified that essential components of humour are some sort of what they called violation. So really something that does offend someone, or something that not literally violates someone. It's a weird word, but that's the word they chose to use. But something that is offensive or can hurt or maim or something. So think about slapstick humour. Yeah. So violation is one. And the other side that is humorous...
Wait, maim, isn't it the physical definition?
Well, yeah, but that's thing. So think about
maim someone, isn't it?
Mate,
isn't it?
Funniest Home Videos made an entire 200 seasons on people getting hurt.
You're so I'm thinking about stand-up comedy. Okay.
Anything that's funny. Why is anything at all funny? And there has to be some sort of violation, so some sort of problem or conflict or, frankly, offensive idea. And there also has to be some sort of distance. And when they talk about distance, they're not talking about a physical distance necessarily. The distance could be time. So, for example, a car accident. You had a car accident on the way here. Probably not as funny as it will be in a year's time where you're like, oh man, I T-boned that car when I was driving to your place that time. Yeah. Or distance could be how far away you are from the group. So making fun of vegans is hilarious if you're not a vegan.
That's bullying.
But that's the two sides of the whole humour, and this is what this paper argues, is you have to have a violation, so something that's at least a little bit offensive, and you have to have some sort of distance. And they had questions for the groups of people to examine this, and then they put out different scenarios for similar questions. And I'll run you through a few here on what people thought was offensive, what they thought was funny, and whether they thought it was offensive and funny.
Can I take it, just going to take a wild guess? I think I know which one I'm going to find the most funny.
Okay, well, here's scenario one.
Okay.
Keith's father had passed away, and Keith's father said that, Keith, you can do whatever you want with my ashes. Scenario one, Keith snorted them.
No, that is. Are you talking about Keith Richards?
I don't know. It just said Keith. I think it's just a.
I think it's Keith Richards.
Maybe
where he
it
joked
is.
about snorting. No, he did, because he actually joked about snorting his father's ashes.
Oh yeah, well it could be. Well, 82% of people said that was wrong or somewhat offensive. 38% of people said that was funny, and 29% of people said it was both offensive and funny.
Okay, so 82% said it was offensive, and 38 said, okay, cool.
It was funny.
Yep.
Now, the second scenario to that, testing it out, so same idea, you can do whatever you want with the ashes. Scenario 2 was Keith buried the ashes. 6% of people found that offensive. 5% of people found that funny.
How is that funny?
It's not funny. I don't know who the 5% are. I'm weirded about them. So Keith got ashes and he buried them. Oh, crazy Keith.
Fuck,
it's
no,
not funny.
It's
See,
not,
scenario one is clearly funnier.
It is, yeah.
Scenario one is clearly more offensive.
Keith Richards is awesome.
All right, let me give you another one that came out. So Jenny's family was poor and she needed to help them out. Okay?
Sorry.
Scenario one.
That's the joke.
That's the joke. Scenario one. She sold her virginity on eBay. Okay? 78% of people found that offensive. 45% of people find that funny. 35% of people think it's both. Okay, scenario 2. To help out a family, she sold her jewellery on eBay. 2% of people found that offensive. I don't know how that's offensive.
How is that offensive?
I don't know. And 2% of people found that funny. So you can see there is a definite pattern between what people see as offensive or wrong and what people see as funny.
Somehow I think that's just based on a true story. I think Jenny's real.
I don't know.
Just like Keith.
I have no idea.
The author's name's not Jenny, is it?
I have no idea, actually. I didn't think I wrote it down. No, I just wrote the university it came from.
Oh, good on you.
All right, here's your third study. Yeah. So Jimmy Dean, which is like a meat producer, I believe, in the US, Jimmy Dean decides to hire a spokesman for a new line of pork products. Scenario 1, they hire a rabbi. 21% of people found that offensive. Okay. 62% of people found that funny, and 12% were both. Scenario 2, they hire a farmer. 0% of people found that offensive. 12% of people found that funny. I don't know why that's funny either, but...
I don't know. I reckon if you put it on our page, someone will find that last one funny.
Yeah.
Can I say the overall funniness of that isn't that funny? Like, I reckon there'd be people that go, neither of those are funny. This is shit. Why did I agree to do this study?
Yeah, no, well, I think that's the point. It's like you're comparing these two situations. How many people? And they had to have a neutral situation, and then they had to have a bit more risque situation there with the... selling your virginity or hiring a rabbi to sell pork or anything.
Because we know how funny academics are.
Yeah, that's right. Anyway, just to really suck the fun out of this, they called it the benign violation theory. So it actually has a name, this theory behind humour, about how humour has to be a violation and has to do with the distance from the violation for the observer.
Ah, okay.
So basically, you can sum it up as saying that for something to be funny, it must satisfy our moral compass, so it must fit within our own personal moral guidelines, but it must also challenge them at the same time.
Oh, so you've got to be comfortable with making a joke, but it has to be kind of approaching that edge.
Yeah, a bit uncomfortable.
It's got to make people uncomfortable, but it's got to be funny. Do you know who
like a warm fart.
Yeah, do you know who one of my favourite comedians is Anthony Jeselnik?
Oh, he's a shocker.
I got to meet him one night and I said, great show, Dane Cook. He fucking was pissed about that.
Really?
He didn't like that at all. He just kind of just looked at me.
Really?
Yeah. I said.
Maybe you're not the first one or something.
No, I don't know.
Great show, Dane. Mate, if he got offended by that...
He's the one that does all those rom-coms and shit like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. He got pissed.
You know the fishes? And all that stuff. He's just totally intense.
Mate, if he got offended at that, I'd be like, fucking... Bring yourself back down to earth, pal. Hang on a minute. Your entire bit is about offending people. And they're horrifically offensive, some of the shit he
they're
says.
amazing, aren't they? They are amazing.
Oh, dear.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Well, let's turn it around. So, great example to lead into my next point.
Can I say one more thing? If people, and we're not sponsored by them, if people want to go to push that boundary, I'm not sure if the website's still around. It still might be there. Go to sinfulshirts.com. If you want to kind of push the boundary of what you think's comfortable to wear anywhere, even by yourself in your house, yeah, it's pretty bad.
I've always enjoyed, the comic strip Cyanide and Happiness.
Mate,
walks a
this
fine line,
looks
that's
like
great.
play school compared to that. Sinful Shirts.
Sinful Shirts. Oh.
You gotta see it.
Should listeners be looking this up on incognito?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. They should be looking this up.
Don't want that in your history. Okay. Well, let's go back to Jeslinick. So the ability to laugh at yourself.
Yes.
Okay. If you're offended at something or if you're not offended at something really does depend on your ability to look at yourself and have a bit of a laugh, right? Mm-hmm. So there was a 2012 study from the University of Western Ontario, and it sort of looked at the ability to laugh at oneself, and it concluded that people who can laugh at themselves are better able to cope with tragedy. They're more comfortable with their own personal views, so if vegans get really offended, they're probably shitty vegans. Yeah, probably not, I'm just saying that. But
Shitty vegans.
I hope the shitty vegans got offended by that. Good on you, good vegans, having a laugh right now.
Yeah, good on them. Breaking this down, the stereotype that we put out there.
People able to laugh at themselves are also better able to regulate their emotions, and they're able to grow with new information, as in they cope with change a lot easier as well. It did talk about the negative aspects of humour, like self-depreciation as well, leading to, depression and other things, but it suggested that the positive aspects far outweigh the negative in one's ability to laugh at themselves. So being able to laugh at yourself really is a positive character trait.
So you've pretty much done this whole episode, and you just talked about how great we are because we can laugh at ourselves.
Yeah, pretty much, and how wrong everyone else is because we've offended them. I also talked about what is funny.
Okay.
But, look, you can say why I've done this episode, but I'm backing this up with science here.
Can I just say, Trump.
Not very good at laughing at himself? I don't know. Is that what you're saying? You want to elaborate on that?
Actually, no, he just offends everyone, doesn't he?
He's pretty offensive.
Yeah, he just offends everyone and then doesn't laugh at himself and gets really... Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Yep. Yeah, okay.
Well, there's another 2011 study from UC Berkeley and the University of Zurich which analysed 126 respondents and their views on how well they are able to take a joke. And then they got 70 of these respondents, so they were a group of mates, and they talked about how well they think their friends respond to jokes as well. And what they found is they showed this 70-odd people of them pictures of people and warped their faces to make them look weird. And then they were photographing them, taking pictures of them during the study. A few of the pictures that popped up were their own faces distorted and moved out of face, and they actually had people laughing at themselves, literally. And what they found is the people that were better able to laugh at themselves were generally more self-aware, and also other people were more aware of them as well. So they recognized them as open and honest and really said they were less fake. And this was peer perceptions of them as well as self-perception. So the ability to laugh at yourself means not only do you have better resilience emotionally, but your friends see you as more resilient and open and friendly and real.
Yeah, I'd have to say we've got a pretty close group of friends, and pretty much if you
They're
can't...
very offensive
It's
too.
just like this is...
We are the calmest of that bloody group, Jesus.
So, that's interesting. I just cannot remember a time that
We've said some offensive stuff that hasn't garnered as much of a response as some of the things we said last week, and that sort of surprised me, which is why I wanted to look at this stuff.
It's kind of funny because, even with some people that say, oh, I find what you do about this funny, but I found this quite offensive. I found it a little bit bullying. It's like, well, there you go. It's exactly what you're talking about. If you have a distance, you distance yourself from a group, then you're a lot more likely to find things about that group funny.
Look, I think at the end of it, we're not trying to be offensive. If you're offended, I'm sorry. It's not intended that way, but, most of our followers don't seem to be offended by that. If you're offended, please write to us. We're open to having a reasonable discussion. If you call us bullies and fuckwits and whatever you want to call us, then we're probably not going to have a reasonable discussion with you.
Well, look, yeah, they're probably right too.
Yeah, we'll probably just send you some gift flipping you off. I don't know. Yeah.
Or a nude. I wonder if that diversity fuels that kind of...
I think so. If you turn it into less of a group thing and maybe more of a personal thing, like, oh, that Jenny, this is a story about her. She sold her virginity on eBay because she was poor.
Yeah, but you'd find... See, that's the thing. I don't know. There's still a lot to be researched, and I guess there's more than just one kind of... There's so many variables. Like, you look at it like
absolutely.
the cultural kind of acceptance of certain things you can say now that you couldn't say before. Like for instance, okay, a gay couple kissing on television. People look at that now and go, oh yeah, you were to do that, say, 40, 50 years ago, it would be offensive and you'd get complaints into the networks and things like that. So in regards to that, like, I guess offense, people being offensive has probably helped, push that along, especially like with people the gay community making jokes about being gay, and
that's a good point,
all that
actually.
Type of
Yeah.
stuff. Like by putting it out there and putting it into the social circle and making jokes about it, things do become more accepted because you do have people laughing at themselves, and you have people like we had the other day breaking the stereotype, saying, "Oh, this is funny." Yeah, that's pretty true. We are a bit like that.
Yeah.
And then you have people who are obviously the loudest who are going to kind of say, no, don't
maybe the
offend."
halal snack packs, the highly sensitive persons.
Yeah, highly sensitive persons, the halal snack packs of the world.
That's right. Well, look, I think so. But look, if you're offended by anything we do at Sci-gasm, we apologise, but we're probably not going to stop.
No, look, you can apologise. I'm not going to. No,
Well, I'm sorry you're offended.
I'm sorry you're offended, but get over yourself.
Yeah. No offence.
No offense. Thanks, guys. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all that other kind of crazy stuff. And, have a great one.